Well, Kansas got rocked on the basketball court by Arizona. I am getting rocked by allergies right now, but we're going to fight through it. We're going to get the show done. Talk about Kansas basketball coming up next. This is a live edition of the paid podcast here on our YouTube channel at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN. I'm Nick Springer. I'm here with Kevin Flaherty. We're brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon on Saturday as Kansas falls against Arizona 84-61 on the road in Tucson, all but eliminating KU from a shot at the Big 12 title. Meanwhile, Arizona now all they have to do is win one more game and they'll have clinched a share of it. So a consequential loss for Kansas in the standings. They lose big by 23 on the road. They're going to be at Arizona State coming up next, and this was a game where there were various moments where you thought, my gosh, KU should be down 30. And then there were several moments where you're thinking, okay, now you have a chance here. Kansas eventually cuts it to 2 in the second half, and then it really just falls apart from there. They end up losing by 23 against a really good Arizona team. Kevin, initial takeaways from this game.
Yeah, I mean, it was one where you can maybe survive one kill shot on the road against a really good team. And a kill shot, of course, being what Evan Mia determines a 10-0 run. Kansas had runs given up of 19-0 and 16-0 in this one in each half. You can't survive both of those. And so there are a lot of things that factored in here. Obviously, on social media, a lot of people are talking about the officials. You guys in the comments are talking about the officials. The officials played a part. Yeah, it was a roughly officiated game. I don't think there's any doubt about that. The officials aren't the reason KU got run, though. KU got absolutely destroyed on the glass, right? Lost by 22 on the glass. They went super cold. They took tough shots. There are a lot of different reasons that they lost this game. The officials are maybe in that discussion of why it wound up being what it was. But I really do think that, generally speaking, KU just didn't play tough enough. They didn't battle enough on the glass. And outside of a stretch where, to be quite frank, Nick, Arizona kind of forgot Braden Burries existed. And Burries is a guy that has given KU a lot of issues. And that was part of what kind of let them do it. But at the same time, I don't think KU did anything well in this game. It was good to show fight to get down to 2, but tell me what Kansas did that dictated KU winning this basketball game, and I'll listen to the ref complaint as the reason that they lost this game. They didn't shoot it super well. They took tough shots. They got owned on the glass. They turned the ball over with bad turnovers and some pick sixes as well. I mean, think about the Karchenkov, the inbounds that you basically throw a touchdown pass to the Arizona guy. I mean, when you look at all that and all of that adds up, the reason I don't go to the refs as quickly as a lot of other people do is it takes away agency from your team, right? And KU has had some really good teams over the years that have gotten really bad whistles at times, and they found ways to tough it out and win the game because they played well. In this game, KU didn't do anything well enough to win this basketball game, and ultimately that's why they got crushed.
Right. I think if you want to use the officiating argument, if this game was officiated fairly, Kansas still loses by 18. Yeah. I don't know what we're talking about here. Kansas did not play well. They shot the ball poorly. Darren Peterson was bad, especially in the first half. He really struggled from the field. You had Bryson Tiller in foul trouble, so he wasn't really a factor. He had a bad game. Flory was kind of nullified by the bigs for Arizona. You mentioned the rebounding. So yeah, okay, fine, sure. If it's equally officiated, KU loses by 18 instead of 23. I'm not buying into that. It was just a really bad game for KU, and everybody knew. I mean, I think going back to somebody else that made a comment earlier, but I mean, everybody knew this was going to be a tough game for Kansas, right? This was not going to be a walk in the park, regardless of the circumstances for KU. And they really struggled out the gate. And you're basically never going to win. Maybe there is some stat guru who has a stat out there, but I doubt any team in college basketball has ever won a game by having two separate runs of 15 plus points against them. one in the first half for Arizona of 19 and one in the second half for Arizona for 16. Quite frankly, it's a miracle that Kansas even lost by 23. If you just look at it from that standpoint. So that's really what it came down to is Kansas really struggled in this one. They got, bodied up pretty good by Arizona's bigs. Koa Pete had been missing some time. Pete Thamel comes out yesterday, says he's going to play. He ends up playing in this game and played pretty well. You mentioned Braden Burries, who obviously is a really quality player as well. And so, and the other thing I would add about the officiating is the thing that I always say, and I think you've said this as well before, Kevin, is like, you have to just adjust to it, right? Like if it's being officiated one way or the other, like you can't use that as an excuse. Like you can't be constantly looking to the officials begging for fouls, right? If they're not going to call it, you just have to play it that way too, right? You just have to match however it's being called. And so, that always rubs me the wrong way when I see guys constantly begging for fouls. Cause like, if it's not getting called, okay, then now play that way, right? Play that way.
And I don't want to interrupt you, Nick, but let's be clear. It was a super physical game at Allen Fieldhouse. They let them play at Allen Fieldhouse. If you guys don't remember, people were getting clobbered in that game. Like that was, and so that's where I push back on it a little bit. And I do get Arizona wound up racking up the free throws down the stretch in particular, and really, put some distance in there. But I really do think that it was something where KU was allowed to play physically, Arizona was allowed to play physically at Allen Fieldhouse, and Kansas wound up winning that game. There were a lot of Arizona fans that thought that they got screwed at Allen Fieldhouse, and I'm not sure they did. I thought they didn't call it. But in this case, Arizona was the better team. And you can say what you want about, offensive rebounds, they're climbing on guys, and, they got to the free throw line or whatever else. I mean, Philip's got a good point. If you go to a tough road atmosphere in the Big 12, you're not going to get the benefit of a whistle. And the example I would bring up to a lot of you guys too is, remember when KU beat West Virginia and had just like the huge free throw disparity, wound up being like 35-3 or something like that. Do you remember that game, Nick? Huggins gets ejected at the end, and I went back and was writing for 24/7 Sports at the time, and went back and tracked the game because West Virginia fans were like, we got hosed. I can't believe this free throw disparity. And I tracked it, and West Virginia should have had more fouls than they did. It would have impacted West Virginia the other way, as crazy as it sounds, because West Virginia was shooting a lot of jumpers. They weren't being as aggressive. And when you look at this game, I don't think Kansas was as aggressive as Arizona was. They generally weren't driving into contact as much. I'm not saying they never were, but Arizona was getting more shots at the rim. They were getting more shots in the paint. They were going into contact more often. And so they put themselves in a position to do that. You think about kind of the lasting image of this game for KU is taking a lot of really tough 2-point jumpers. And so I do think that there's some of that in there. Again, I'm not saying that KU didn't get a rough whistle. I'm saying it's not the reason Kansas lost this game. Kansas lost this game because they didn't do anything well.
Yeah, going back to the first half, I think we saw Darren Peterson try to enter takeover mode, and he took a lot of jump shots, a lot of fading away shots, and they weren't falling. And that was part of I think that was part of the reason why Kansas ended up falling to a 19-0 run, pretty early in the game, was that he was trying to take over for KU, and the shots weren't falling, and it wasn't like he was driving in. And Philip comes in and says, literally all of our players played like crap, and I think that's true. I mean, Trey White had a pretty good stretch in the second half where, he was hitting some nice shots. He ended up finishing with 13 points in the game, where he was hitting some shots. Melvin Council did a couple nice things during stretches. But, yeah, I mean, when you get the production you got from Kansas with your bigs, considering what Arizona has on the other side, in terms of, 7'2" guy plus Koa Pete, like, you're probably going to struggle against Arizona when your two big men, if you're Kansas, with Bryson Tiller and Floyd Verdugo, combined for 4 points on 1 of 9 shooting, and they, between the two of them, grab 6 rebounds. Like, that's not going to win. And we've talked about this before. If there's one sort of area that's of concern for Kansas, it's that big depth, right? If one of those guys, if Bryson Tiller or Floyd Verdugo gets in foul trouble, or if one of them is playing poorly, or if in this case today they're both playing poorly, then this is a possible outcome for KU because they don't necessarily have any extra depth they can lean on. Now, Paul Mbia, by the way, my favorite player on the team. I love that guy. He comes in and actually, I thought, held his own for the most part. Like I don't think he played badly when he was out there, when he was forced to be out there. And so I was happy to see Paul out there. I think, Bill Self was kind of backed into a corner that one, realized like, okay, with Bryson Tiller picking up 3 fouls in the first half, like you can't play small against Arizona because we saw the outcome. And so Paul got out there, had a chance to play a little bit, which I personally love to see that. But yeah, you're not going to win very much when that happens if you're Kansas. When Bryson Tiller has 2 fouls in the first 90 seconds of the game, he gets his 3rd foul with like 8 minutes left in the first half. Flory Badunga was basically completely nullified. And, part of the issue, and this I think opens up a deeper conversation, is we've seen games this season where Darren Peterson goes into takeover mode and is just hitting every shot and carrying, right? We've seen games where he's more team oriented and is not scoring as much. And then we've seen games like today where he tries to go into takeover mode, but the shots aren't falling. And the result is that the shots aren't hitting for him. But then on top of that, you're not able to get anybody else really going either. So that was kind of what I thought happened in the first half, is that you weren't able to get anybody else going because Peterson was trying to be that guy to will Kansas back in the game. Now, in the second half, he had 2 crazy plays where he followed his own shot and scored and was like, made some crazy – he ended up with 24 points. So it worked a little bit better, and that's part of the reason why I think Kansas got back into the game. But in the first half, that was a big reason why I thought it slipped away from them a little bit in the first half, which they ended up rallying to only be down 11 at halftime, which I thought was, a miracle at the time.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. It felt like the first half, but even beyond Peterson, like there was a play where El Marco, kind of got the ball into a dangerous area, didn't have his head up and missed, a potential cutter for a dunk. There was a lot of kind of playing with your head down. And I think, Peterson, there were a couple drives that he had where it looked like maybe Trey White was open for a catch and shoot opportunity. And those are the things that this team needs to work through. Everybody, I think wants to kind of flush this one and ask about what's going to happen in the future. And we always talk about that. But I really think that one of the things that this team needs to get better at is they need to get better at playing with each other. And we've talked about this a lot. And, the off-ball movement, could stand to be better. The ball movement could stand to be better. But also just noticing, like, hey, I'm driving into the paint. There are 2 guys there sitting there waiting for me. I've got an open look here. They aren't creating as well for each other. And I thought that was something that Peterson actually did better in the second half. You had the little shovel off, obviously, to Melvin Council for a 3. I thought once Peterson got a few buckets and Arizona really locked in on him, you started to see Peterson start to find his teammates in dangerous situations. And that was part of the reason that they started to make that comeback as well, was other guys were starting to get involved. They were getting the ball to people in dangerous positions. And I think that's the thing that doesn't maybe get talked about enough with the Darren Peterson injury, is everybody wants to look at it from strictly a Darren Peterson standpoint. I think the biggest standpoint, and the reason you want to see him continue to play, by the way, his 3rd straight game with 30-plus minutes. So, hopefully that is, knock on wood, behind Kansas. But the big thing is, how do players play off of him, and how does he play through other players as well? Because if you watch Darren Peterson in high school, and I know, Nick, you and I did, he created well for other guys. When defenses would collapse on him, it wasn't like he was going 1-on-4. He was finding ways to get his teammates involved. The passing and the creation were there. And that's something that Kansas needs to kind of figure out over this last week or 2 before the NCAA tournament, is how to get that chemistry going and how you continue to get those guys to play off of each other. And so I do think that that's a major factor. And that was an issue in the first half, was you had guys driving into traffic or taking long jumpers. You didn't have guys creating for other players. And the guy that I thought really got hurt by it today, Nick, was Flory Badunga, because Flory is a guy that doesn't create his own shot. He depends on other people to set him up. Flory didn't get a whole lot of touches in great areas. And you've talked about it before. KU's offense is a lot better when Flory gets touches, because Flory's touches are typically really efficient with where he gets the ball.
Right. That was some of my frustration earlier in the season. And I think today was also a little bit of an example of that as well, where, Fleury he's not Hunter Dickinson in the sense that you can just go down the court and feed it to him and he's going to go be able to score something, right? That's not what he does. That's not where he's most impactful. Where he's most impactful is being able to play off other guys and then get the ball in opportunities where he can go, dunk it or go utilize his athletic ability. He's not somebody you can just throw to with his back to the basket and he's going to go score. What that means is that you have to be able to, in the half court offense, have enough movement and ball movement that he's able to get involved, right? Because it's not going to be as simple as just simply feeding him and he's going to go create something. He needs some extra movement, some extra opportunities in order to go make plays. And yeah, today he really wasn't doing that. Philip Guy points out that Floyd couldn't even really get close to the basket. That was probably by design from Arizona's defense, if I had to guess. They probably were aware of that fact. And I know in the first half they doubled him several times, kind of away from the basket, which really negatively impacted him. By the way, you want to talk about officiating? There was one play in the first half where Flory gets double teamed. He picks up his dribble like on the baseline, and then he gets to almost past the 3-point line, past the free throw line, never took a dribble, and it was not traveling. So you want to talk about officiating? Go look at that play, and maybe Arizona fans say, "Oh, the officiating was terrible." I'm just saying. But the point being, yeah, with Flory, and maybe this is where I guess there's a bit of a cap on his ceiling in terms of what he can provide for Kansas, is that he really does need to be able to play off of other guys. He's not somebody that can just go do something on his own in the post and get the ball and go score. He really needs an opportunity to play off for other guys, whether that's pick and roll, whether that's, whatever it may be. So a game like today, you saw what happens when they are able to activate him, right? He's really kind of non-existent in terms of impact on the game.
Yeah, I mean, he winds up taking the sixth most shots on the team, and I think if you were to ask Nick Springer his opinion and say should Elmarko Jackson or Flory Badunga be taking more shots, you would probably be in the area that Flory should take more shots. By the way, Flory and Bryson Tiller finish a combined 2 for 11. To borrow a phrase from Seth Davis, that's not how you get Capone, right? Those two were terrific and big parts of KU beating Arizona the first go round. If you're going to have your two big guys go 2 for 11, I know we're officiating is what people want to talk about, but you're not going to win many games as Kansas with Bryson Tiller and Flory combining to go 2 for 11, Elmarko adding a 1 for 7. Not shooting well as a team. All of those things are major factors, and that's before you get in, how they struggled defensively, the turnovers, all of those different things.
Yeah, that's true. We haven't even talked about the defensive struggles for Kansas, which there were times where Arizona was getting at will whatever buckets they wanted, and that's what Arizona is, guys. Like, we've touched on a little bit, but this Arizona team, they don't shoot the three very much, but that's because they are elite at getting inside and getting to the rim and scoring, whether it's with Krivas, whether it's with Pete, whether it's Burries and Bradley driving, whatever it may be. Like, that's their bread and butter. That's what they're good at. And today they put that on display in this game against Kansas. And that's a big reason why they're able to win the game as well. So we'd have to hit a break. By the way, huge thank you to everybody joining us today. If you're in our live chat, we very much appreciate you. Continue to share your comments. If you're frustrated, we'd love to hear that as well. Whatever your comment is, please share it in the live chat. If you're joining us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and also like the video. If you're listening after the fact on audio, thank you as well. And be sure to subscribe wherever you get your audio, and also leave us a 5-star rating and review. We'll take a quick time out. We'll talk about what's next. We'll talk about some more takeaways from this game. We'll do that and more coming up next.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story, like Brain Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Brain Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner in possible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
This is the Paid Podcast, a live edition here on our YouTube channel at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN. I'm Nick Springer. I'm here with Kevin Flaherty. Of course, we're brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible. Member FDIC. Please, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're over 1,600 subscribers. Let's keep it pushing. Let's keep it going. Let's go for 1,700. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and also leave a comment. Join us in the live chat as well if you're already doing that. We thank you so much for doing so. You can also listen after the fact on audio. Please subscribe there. Leave us a 5-star rating and review there as well. Some interesting comments in the chat here, Kevin, during the break. Matthew Siri says, trying to rack my brain, what are good road games we have won? I'm sure there was. I just can't think of it. When you look at true road games, you're talking about
without Christian Anderson,
right? I mean, you're talking about
a good win, but
yeah, in true road games, you're talking about Texas Tech. KU obviously played very well in the K-State game, but K-State's pretty bad.
Yeah,
they handled NC State earlier in the season on the road, and it's also been pointed out, in the fact that are they Allen Fieldhouse merchants? Okay, fine. Allen Fieldhouse is great. That's fine with me.
No, they're 4-1 on neutral courts this year, and
yeah.
so 3 of those games were against NCAA tournament teams because it looks like Missouri is going to reach the NCAA tournament, and obviously KU murderballed Missouri. KU beat Tennessee, obviously, in a terrific effort on a neutral court. And then the one loss, guys, was to Duke when you didn't have Darren Peterson, and that was a game obviously they didn't play really poorly in. They were right there with 5 minutes left before Duke was able to pull away in that one a little bit. But my point is just that, as somebody mentioned in the chat, it may have been Dave. You don't play your NCAA tournament games on road courts. You play them on neutral courts, and KU's 4-1 on neutral courts, with the only loss being to the number 1 team in the country when you didn't have Darren Peterson, and that game was even close. I think it was like a 4-point game with 5 minutes left, something like that, and then Duke winds up winning. So I guess the point is just that I wouldn't put too much stock into them only being Allen Fieldhouse merchants. And I think, too, the other part of it is they aren't going to have to play at Arizona or at Iowa State or some of these environments in the NCAA tournament.
Listen, I don't view the term Allen Fieldhouse merchants as a negative.
Yeah.
Win your home games, defend your home court. Like, I think that's great. I think every team wants to be a merchant of their home court.
And the flip side of it is, guys, is the worst showing they've had all year maybe was at home against Cincinnati. So yeah, I don't know that it's as much an Allen Fieldhouse merchant thing as it is, this is a team that has a really high ceiling when they're playing really well, and they've got a pretty low floor when they aren't. And I think, unfortunately, you've seen some games, and this includes one of them, that in this game, you saw both of them, right, Nick? Like you saw Arizona go through stretches where it looked like KU was Swiss cheese and wasn't going to present any sort of challenge, and then you saw the metal to get back to within 2. And so that's who this KU team is, right? At any given moment, home or away, I think neutral court as well, they're capable of beating anybody. And I think the flip side of that is if they aren't playing well, if they aren't locked in, if their energy level isn't good, then they can lose to just about anybody.
I mean, I think Bill Self has actually said this himself. If you defend your home court in the regular season and you win 50% of your road games, you're going to be a top 5, top 4 team in your conference probably, and you're going to be a top 16 seed in the NCAA tournament. And then, like we've been discussing, everything's a neutral court at that point. So the whole argument between road versus home games becomes moot because you're playing in neutral courts in the NCAA tournament. So that's kind of where you're at. And if you look at what Kansas has done so far this season, they obviously had the very bad home loss against Cincinnati. They, in terms of road games, they beat Colorado, they beat K-State, they beat Texas Tech, they beat Oklahoma State. So, they're on their way to being close to 50-50 in road conference games. They're going to play Arizona State on Tuesday, which we might talk a little bit more about later on in the show. But yeah. And guess what? The end result is you're going to have 23 wins and be a top 4-ish, top 5 team in your conference. That's just how it goes.
Yeah. By the way, Henry over at the Journal World, quoting Bill Self, Henry's there. They physically dominated us inside. Obviously, it was evident to anybody watching. And then our shot selection was so poor. We played soft when we played them at our place. We made them not play great. We kind of uglied the game up, and there was nothing that uglied it up tonight. So Bill Self certainly on the same page as a lot of people, I think, here, where it was, hey, Kansas didn't do what it needed to do to get across the finish line or even really make this one a game. And I think
Right.
that I think that's Bill Self's big thing, right? Is even if you aren't going to play well, you got to muddy it up for the other team, and Kansas didn't muddy it at all.
Right. We've talked about this. Bill Self talks about this regularly. If you're going to play a C- game, then it's your job to go make your opponent play a D+ game, right? If you're going to play, if you're not going to play your best game, it's you still have an opportunity to go make your opponent, play worse than you. And Kansas certainly did not do that today, right? You mentioned the shot selection was really poor, especially in the first half when they gave up that 19-0 run to get down big. And then that results in you having to claw back. And, think about how much energy that requires when you're down that big to fight all the way back just to get it down to 2. And then you give it all away, obviously down the stretch, with not much effort left in the tank after that. And Arizona ends up winning big. There's been some discussion in the chat, Kevin, about Melvin Council. Matthew comes in and says, I feel like Melvin is so much less aggressive when DP is on, and that frustrates me. Yeah, that continues to be, I think, an ongoing issue, kind of circling back to what you were talking about earlier in the show, which is you've got to try to find that balance with Darren Peterson to where he's playing aggressive and he's also getting his teammates going, right? Because it's pretty obvious. We've seen it with Darren Peterson out there and Darren Peterson goes into attack mode. It makes guys like Melvin Council, guys like Trey White be a little bit more passive.
Yeah.
And what you want to find is sort of that happy marriage of those guys staying aggressive while also Darren Peterson being able to go do his thing. And that, I think, is really what it comes down to when you talk about building team chemistry. Chemistry was such a big buzzword, a couple weeks ago about, can they build the chemistry with Darren Peterson? Well, that's what it means. That's what it looks like. In practicality, that is what it looks like. It looks like Darren Peterson being able to be Darren Peterson while also keeping those other guys aggressive and doing what they normally do. With Melvin Council and Trey White specifically. And then obviously, like we talked about with Floyd Badunga, that it also includes then, being able to get Floyd Badunga going as well. So that's really the key thing. And in today's game, we did not see that, right? And I guess that would be the real cause for concern in a game like this is, it's the end of February, you're about to go into March, and you still don't really necessarily feel like you've had maybe an entire game where you've been able to have that happy marriage of DP staying aggressive and playing at a high level while also allowing those other guys to play at a high level. So I think that's really what you're searching for. And if you're Kansas, you have basically let's call it 4 games to do that, because you're going to have two regular season games left. Let's say you win a game in the Big 12 tournament. So you have basically 4 games between now and the NCAA tournament to really iron that out and feel like you're in a position where you're comfortable with that going into the NCAA tournament. Because once the ball goes up in the NCAA tournament, it's win or go home, and you better figure it out at that point. So that's kind of what you're looking at is you have 4 games left. And today was certainly a step back in a lot of areas. We had the comment earlier about everybody played like crap today. And I think that's pretty accurate, especially when you look at what Marco Jackson did. He's taken some steps back, which is a little bit concerning for Kansas heading into the NCAA tournament, because he really kind of had been that guy. Jamar McDowell takes a step back as well. And, you have Jaden Dawson come off the bench. He gets a 3. And then, in the first half, a critical moment was that second 3 that he takes at the end of the first half, man, if that drops, things could have been totally different, I think, towards the end of the first half. But he ends up missing the second one. But, that's where it circles back to bench production. You're not getting much scoring from your bench either. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you still have to figure those things out. You still have some time. Not much time, 4 games, but that's what it's got to be. And yeah, Hopjack in the chat says Jabari and Marco were bad, and that's a problem because those are your first 2 guys off the bench. And so if you take those away, then you're really, really limited on what your production is going to be from your bench, and that can impact you as well. So yeah, I would say when you look at this game specifically, like I mentioned earlier, you knew this was going to be a tough game regardless, right? And I don't know if anybody, if for people that are maybe on the sports betting side of things, the sports books, this line ballooned up pretty big. It got up to Arizona favored by 10.5, and I think myself, probably and a lot of other Key fans thought that's a pretty high number, but obviously Arizona's a pretty good team and they just out-physicaled, out-efforted Kansas at various moments in this game. Kansas didn't take great shots, and the end result is you lose by 23.
Yeah, forget everything else, Nick. Like, leave everything else out. If you just looked at the shot charts and said, hey, here's the quality of shots that both teams took, you would say Arizona would have won this game, and probably by a pretty sizable margin. And so that's going to be the tough thing. And you mentioning the chemistry with Melvin Council and Darren Peterson, some people in the chat wondering, like, hey, can they get there? There have been periods this year, and they haven't been super long stretches or whatever, and probably not multi-game stretches, but there have been times where it's looked pretty good with all of them working together. The ball is moving around. This group, they may not ever be, because Darren Peterson is a ball in hand guy and Melvin Council is a ball in hand guy, they may not ever be Frank Mason and Devontae Graham. And those two were so symbiotic in the way that they played off of each other. You could have Frank Mason being National Player of the Year, and yet he still was going to work off of Devontae so incredibly well. And to your point about Fleury mixing in with all that too, they got Josh Jackson involved with all the things that they do. And right now, I think the defense is the most important thing. If KU doesn't defend, we've said it so many times on this show, if the defense isn't there, it's a non-starter. This team's going home. They have to defend well because that's who they are. But the number two thing for me would be making sure that the ball is moving, that it's not sticking, that it's getting from this guy to this guy to this guy, reversing it. And that's when you start to get better looks for Fleury, because he's able to get better angles on post-ups. That's when you're able to get better driving lanes for Council. That's when you're able to get better looks for Peterson, quite frankly, because people aren't able to gang up their whole defense on him. And so to me, the two things that heading out of this one, you say, this is what Kansas has to have to go to the Final Four or make a potential national title run. The two biggest things to me are defense and then finding a way to get that ball moving around, and that's going to help them a lot offensively. Rebounding is a major issue, as Hop mentions there. When they fight, guys, they can rebound, right? Arizona didn't kill KU on the glass in the first matchup. Houston, KU actually out-rebounded Houston in that game. And so I think when they defend, when you see that energy level and that toughness, I think that they can beat anybody. But those are the things that I would want to clean up over the next couple weeks is, hey, Darren, you don't need to drive into the teeth of the defense, before the ball has switched sides. Move that thing around, get your offense within the flow of the offense. And I think that gets everybody else going as well. And then defensively, they have to lock down. And they've shown so many times this year that they're capable of that their best defense, they can shut down a lot of people. I don't know if you saw, Nick, Houston put up 102 points today. Granted, it was against Colorado, but I mean, it's even so, obviously KU made Houston's offense look pretty rough in that one. And so the defense is something that they can bring, but they have to bring that to every round, because if they defend really well, they can go to the Final Four. If they don't, they could get knocked out in the second round. And that's kind of the fate of this team right now.
By the way, huge thank you to everybody joining us tonight on our live show here on YouTube. If you're joining us, be sure to do three things. Please subscribe to the channel. Please like the video, and also join our live chat. Share a comment, share your thoughts, get in on the conversation. A couple of notes here on just looking ahead to the NCAA tournament. I don't know about you guys, and I know, Kevin, you're a college basketball junkie, so you look around the country. For me personally, it's looking more and more like Kansas is probably going to be locked into a 3 seed at this point in time. Here's what I would say about that. As long as you're not in the region where Duke or Michigan is the 1 seed, I feel like Kansas is going to have as good a shot as anybody else at that point.
I ain't scared of Duke.
Yeah.
I don't want Michigan. I don't really want Illinois either, just because that lineup has so much size and so much shooting. I feel like that's one of those where, you could get into that game, they make shots, and then you wind up. But no, I ain't scared of Duke. I'm not saying Duke isn't really good. Duke is really, really good, but they don't scare me the way that maybe like a Michigan would. I think Michigan would be a tougher matchup. And if it was Duke, like I'm not sitting here biting my fingernails being like, oh man, like no way they get by Duke.
Yeah. And then, so that's, you look at the NCAA tournament, probably going to be a 3 seed. If you look at, talked about this on the past couple shows, but where this loss does certainly impact Kansas is when you start to talk about the Big 12 tournament and seeding wise for KU. If the Big 12 tournament started today, KU would actually have to, I believe they'd be the 5 seed actually, because of the results we saw earlier today with Iowa State losing against Texas Tech in Ames, which is a big loss for Iowa State. So again, just for everybody that maybe is not totally familiar with it, with the Big 12 tournament, if you are a top 4 team in the conference, you will get a double bye in the Big 12 tournament, and you do not play your first game until Thursday, which is the equivalent of the quarterfinal games at that point. So you're straight into the quarterfinals if you are a top 4 team, basically, in this conference standings to end the season. And right now, there are 5 teams fighting for those top 4 spots, basically. Now, you have Arizona, who has obviously cemented themselves certainly in the top 4 and all but probably going to win the Big 12 regular season title. Then you have so Arizona sitting at 14-2 after today. You have Houston and Texas Tech, who are now both at 12-4 in the conference after Texas Tech beat Iowa State today. And then you have Iowa State and Kansas, who are sitting at both at 11-5 in the conference right now. So if you're Kansas, your next 2 opponents are Arizona State on the road on Tuesday and then K-State on Senior Day. So you would like to think that sets up KU to win both those games and then finish 13-5. So assuming that is the case, you basically just need Iowa State to lose one more game, and then Kansas will, at that point, with a 13-5 record, be locked into the top 4.
Yeah.
So guess who Iowa State has to play next?
It feels like a team that we just saw play, right?
They have to play Arizona at Arizona on Monday. Yeah. So if you want to ensure that Kansas will have to potentially play basically one last game in the Big 12 tournament and only not have to play until Thursday, you should be becoming a huge Arizona fan on Monday night when Arizona plays against Iowa State, because that will almost ensure that Kansas will probably be a top 4 seed, assuming Kansas handles their own business against Arizona State on Tuesday and then goes and handles K-State on Senior Day as well to end the season. So that's kind of where things are at right now is as it pertains to the Big 12 tournament and sort of the rest of the season. You want to get in that top 4 if you're Kansas to ensure you're getting a double bye to play potentially one less game in Kansas City. In terms of the NCAA tournament, you're pretty much guaranteed a 3 seed at this point. I mean, I guess if you go on a run in Kansas City and pick up a couple more big wins against maybe Houston, Iowa State, or maybe in Arizona again, you rip off 3 straight top 10 wins. Maybe that gets you back to the onto the 2 line. But it certainly looks like Kansas's fate is pretty much going to be probably that 3 seed, which, by the way, there is the possibility Kansas could end up in Oklahoma City, which would be a good draw for KU fans, obviously.
Except that Oklahoma City hasn't traditionally been very kind to KU.
That is also true, too. So maybe you don't want that. I don't know. So, yeah, that's kind of where things are at right now in terms of what's sort of on the line next for KU in these last 2 games, in terms of where they're going to finish in the Big 12, and then obviously what things look like for them in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I think that you bring up a lot of good points. And if nothing else, you'd like to have that double bye just because you'd have less mileage on your guys' legs heading into all of that. But I do think that this is a team, guys, when we look at the NCAA tournament, so much is going to depend on matchups. And, a lot's going to depend on KU's energy and how well they're defending and whether they're able to keep guys off the glass. But the other thing is it depends depends a lot on whether you're able to get teams that maybe you can have a C+ game against and still win. The 2022 team that won the national title, Nick, I don't know that that's a top 5 team under Bill Self. I really don't. But the NCAA tournament fell to him, right? People were saying, hey, if you get Iowa in the Sweet 16, they're a lot like KU, but they're better offensively, and maybe you lose that game. Well, you didn't get Iowa in the Sweet 16. You got Providence, who pretty much, had to punt the ball at the rim to try and make something. You get Miami instead of Auburn in the Elite Eight. You get Villanova with Justin Moore's injury, and then you get Carolina off a Cinderella run in the title game, and you still have to take care of business, right? Like you think about the 11 team that got VCU in the Elite Eight. The tournament fell to them and they couldn't take advantage of it, even though they were a really good team. And so you still need to take advantage of it. But a lot, I think, with this year's team is going to depend on who they get, how they get them, and then, what effort they're able to put out on that given night. Because like we talked about, this is a team that's capable of going to the Final Four. Shoot, they're capable of winning a national title if it all comes together. But they're also a team that if they get that wrong second round matchup, they don't play well. They come out with a C+ game and they don't muddy things up, then you're potentially in a lot of trouble.
Dave is still on the train in the YouTube chat. So shout out to Dave. He's been conducting that thing for the past 2 months, basically. So tip of the cap to Dave in the YouTube chat. Yeah, Kevin, let me just to wrap things up here. I mean, after today's game, do you really feel any different about where Kansas is at versus coming into it? I mean, 24-point loss against, one of the top 3 teams in the country. Do you feel that different, I guess, after today compared to heading into this one?
No, not really. I as bad as it sounds, I don't want to say I expected them to lose by this amount, but I thought this was going to be a pretty tough ask. And, I probably would have put the line somewhere around what Vegas did, in terms of, hey, this is probably going to be a double-digit Arizona win. The frustrating thing about this one, and maybe the not frustrating thing, Nick, too, is you played so poorly that I think on one hand, you look at it and you really bemoan the fact that you played poorly. But on the other hand, you can look at it and say, hey, there's a lot correctable here, right? I think that when you look at the shot selection, when you look at the lack of ball movement, when you look at self-talk again about the lack of connectivity on offense and the shot selection in the radio interview, you can turn on this tape, Nick, and say, hey, guys, like, if you didn't screw up A, B, and C, you're right there. And those are things you can control. And so to me, like, it would be one thing if Arizona just came out and browbeat KU and you were like, my God, Arizona is an unstoppable force. We played an A game and they still beat us by 12. I think I would look at it differently than the way this one came out, where it was you did not play well at all in any phase, really, and you got handled for it. The good news about it is that's changeable. You know that you can play better than you did today. And so that's going to be up to them, is to find ways to get better shots, to execute better, to defend better, and do all the things that they need to do to go a long way in the tournament.
Couldn't have said it better myself. You got any other final thoughts before we go ahead and wrap this thing up? Kansas is going to be against Arizona State on Tuesday night. And is that a late game? I'm trying to find the time here on it. Is it Arizona time?
I would guess so with it, yeah, with it being there.
That's annoying. Can we not? Okay, 8 p.m. 8 p.m. 8 p.m.
8 p.m. is not bad. 8 p.m.
8 p.m. is doable. All right.
But
I didn't ask before the show, Kevin. Go ahead.
Something else to watch just real quick, Nick, and then I'll let you close it out. Teams have not played well after playing Arizona, and so that's something to watch in that one too. Is Arizona is really physical. They beat you up, and on turnarounds after playing Arizona, teams are not playing very well this year. So something to keep an eye on.
Arizona State, by the way, is 15-14. They beat Utah today by 13 at home. So they're obviously not going to be in the NCAA tournament. And it would seem as though Bobby Hurley is almost certainly not going to return as the head coach for the Sun Devils. So this will be their senior day, though, for them. So I don't know. I don't know if that means anything in today's transfer portal era, but I guess something to consider. Also, Tuesday night, I didn't even ask before the show, Kevin. Are you going to be live? We're going to be good? You going to be ready to roll?
I think we should do it live. What do you think?
Okay, yeah, all right. We're going to do it live. Screw it. We're going to do it live Tuesday night after KU and Arizona State. So you can join us there. You can subscribe on YouTube. We're going to be live pretty much after every KU game the rest of the season. Win or lose, we'll be there. So subscribe on the YouTube channel so that you can join us live if you're able to on our YouTube. You can join many other fantastic KU fans that are on the YouTube live chat. Thank you so much, everybody that joined us and shared their thoughts on YouTube today. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and continue to share your thoughts. You can also, if you're an audio-only listener, subscribe wherever you get your audio. And also leave us a 5-star rating and review to help us continue to grow. We're shooting towards 1,700 subscribers on YouTube, so we thank you so much. And please, if you haven't already, go ahead. It's one click, man. It's one click. And by the way, if you are dying for KU football content, we got you covered, man. We're going to be hitting KU football content hard coming up as well when spring football starts. So we'll have you covered there also. Long story short, subscribe. What are you doing? Please. But that's going to do it for this edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody that joined us. For Kevin Flaherty, I'm Nick Springer. We'll talk to you again soon. See ya. All right. That was not a flagrant one, by the way, on Jamar McDowell.